Hello and welcome to the video. This is a quick video showing you how you can use a module in the back of your Ethos radio. This is the XJT Lite module. This is available from FreeSky and this can be flashed with ACCST version 1.0, which gives you D8s and LR and some other ones as well. Now, when I first was looking to get this radio in, spoke to FreeSky and said that the thing that I was really disappointed about was the fact that when they moved to ACCST version 2.0 and then on to Access and now to Tandem, they kind of left people like me behind a little bit, in that I have a huge investment in ACCST version 1.0 receivers. And the answer from FreeSky for the first 4 or 5 times I mentioned it to them was, well, that's no problem. You just pull the receivers out and you update them to ACCST version 2.0. Well, that's fine if you don't have them buried away in the middle of models where you can't get to them anymore. And also that's kind of tricky because some of the receivers kind of didn't kind of want to be updated, and some of that was a bit tricky. So I really wanted an answer from FreeSky about, well, what about all those D8 whoops that are kicking around? What about all of those older receivers that I've got a huge investment in? Still have about 20 X8Rs kicking around in a box from all of the fixed wings that I build. I cannot be bothered going through and updating all of them to ACCST version 2.0 or 2.1, I think as it is, even though there are some very good reasons to do it. I just don't want to do that. I'd like an option. And with multi-protocol radios, they support ACCST version 1 and ACCST version 2. So you don't have to do anything particularly special. I'm quite pleased to say that FreeSky went away and thought about that and came back with the answer of how you do that. And I've done it here and I've documented it so you can see it. So with the addition of a little XJT Lite module in the back of your new Ethos radio, it can give you access to the legacy FreeSky stuff like D8, LR12 and ACCST version 1.0 receivers too. Sadly, it appears at the moment of recording the firmware available to download is only FCC. It isn't LBT, but hopefully that will be addressed soon. But let me show you how to do this, because if you have whoops kicking around that may be a D8, lots of new stuff these days is Express LRS, but lots of the older stuff tended to be SPI receivers, typically running D8. This is a cute way that by popping a module in the back, you can still run all those models using your new Ethos radio. So here on the bench, let's actually go through the process of updating this XJT Lite module that's going to fit in the back of this radio. This is my, as I said in the introduction, my X18S. Now to do this, I am going to have to update the firmware. I was running 1.30 on this. There was a bug in it that stopped this from working. I've updated it to Ethos 1.31 and this should now work. So the first thing we need to do is we need to flash this XJT Lite back to ACCST version 1, which will also give us D8 and some other stuff as well. Now this is older firmware. If I jump onto the computer, you can see on here that they have added, if we look at the firmware for the XJT Lite module, they've added the version 1 firmware on the website, which is brilliant. So what we're going to do is we will download that. It's actually the firmware directly, FRSK, only one version. So I think this is FCC rather than LBT, unfortunately, just that one. And then what we can do is we can open that file. So this is the file that we've just downloaded. So we'll right click and we'll say copy. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to put that file onto the radio. So what we're going to do is press and hold the enter key and power it. That's going to put it into bootloader mode. And what we'll do is we'll plug the USB cable from the radio into the computer and it should say USB connected. And what we get is a couple of drives that are then shown. The first one looks like this with just bitmaps and fonts. That's not the one we're after. This is the one we're interested in. Now yours might not have a firmware directory, probably not. I made this. Let me just show you how I did it if I delete this, because that's how I tend to do the things on my radios. You want make sure you're using the drive that has the radio.bin file. But we'll right click, we'll say new folder, we'll call it firmware. In that directory, I would copy the firmware that we've just downloaded, just so you've got it handy. It's also good to do things like actually create different subfolders. So one for modules, and then we'll do maybe one for receiver, so new. And this is just a way to kind of keep everything from getting lost. So that's the XJT Lite one that we've got on there. Okay, so now we have updated it into the firmware modules. We can then unload that from the computer. And then once we've done that, we can unplug the USB cable from the computer and turn the radio off. Now, unplug the USB cable from the computer now, because we should have everything we need on here. Next job is to install the module in the back. So it just kind of fits on and then clicks into position like that. Make sure the antenna is connected. What we're going to do, turn the radio on as normal.
Welcome to ETHOS.
We're going to go into the model setup, go into the RF system. In the external module, we'll make sure that it's selected for XJT Lite. That should then power it. Make sure it is turned on. There we go. Now the RF system is on. We should see there's a little set of lights flashing at the back. So the module is powered. Now if we go into the settings, file manager, into the firmware directory we just created, and then into the module directory we created, there's the file. If we click it twice, we get the option to flash external module. So I'll click on that. It should do a device reset and then it'll start flashing. This was the part that on 1.3 there was a problem with it, so it didn't work. So this is just going to continue this. I'm going to make you watch the whole thing. Let's zoom to the end and I'll show you then how we set it up and bind to older ACCST version 1 receivers, but also we can now do things like also connect to things like D8 receivers, perfect for older whoops that are not using stuff like Express LRS. Okay, so here we are, we're finally coming to the end. This has probably taken 3 or 4 minutes, so do make sure your battery is nicely charged. Make sure this process is all okay and that there's no loss of power in the middle of everything. So we're just about to finish. We're going to kind of click close. We're going to return out of all of that. We're going to go back into the model settings, back into the RF system, and then the XJT Lite, we have D8 and LR12. Now I'm just going to restart everything just to double make sure that we don't have a problem. Let me grab a receiver. Let's see if this is going to bind to one of my ACCST version 1 receivers. So here on the desk, I've got an RX8R with ACCST version 1, not updated, not powered at the moment. We're here in the menus, again, XJT Lite, just in the RF system menu. I'll just show you roughly where I am. So in the model menu, RF system, external module is XJT Lite. We've got it selected for D16. We have D8 and LR12 selected. We're going to select bind. We're going to select telemetry 1 to 8 telemetry on. This should be very familiar to those of you that already know ACCST. I'm going to press the bind button. I'm going to power it.
Bind.
We have the flashing button. So we're going to say OK. And then we're going to unpower the receiver and then power it back on. And there we have it. A green light. We are bound. Now we can absolutely check this is the case by plugging in a servo. Don't forget, of course, to select your fail-safe, but let's just return out of this. Look at our outputs. Throttle is channel 3 and throttle hold turned on. There we go. Let's just plug this little fella in. And there we have it. It's all working. Now the only thing I want to check is let's just make sure this works. Let's have a look at the telemetry system. And let's turn it on. And there we have the telemetry coming back via the external module as well, receiver battery and also the RSSI value. So there we have it. That is how you can update your external module to connect to your old ACCST version 1 stuff. So there you have it. It wasn't too tricky, was it? It's a case of getting hold of an XJT Lite, downloading the firmware, flashing it, and just using it like you would with the old Taranis radios and things like that as well. So if you have been looking to maybe move from your old Taranis and you don't want to keep with Open and EdgeTX, you want to go with something ETHOS, well, now we've got an option. At least you can still bind to those older receivers with a new radio like this, thanks to the XJT Lite and the older firmware being available. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that if you're trying to learn a topic will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.